You'll know when you have a wild woman. She'll practice her craft without boundaries. She is truly autonomous. Her loyalty is only to the family she serves, a midwife who will not allow herself to be held back by a system she didn't create.
This podcast is for the birth keepers who want to grow and change. We are open to learning through self-reflection and supportive community. We are creating this space to explore without judgment. We are remembering we were
Born wild. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Born Wild podcast. We're your hosts, Sophia,
Emma,
and Leah.
and today we have a special guest, Angela, who we love, and used to be a midwife in our area and has recently moved. So I'll hand it over to you, let you introduce yourself and share where you live.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is so fun and a little nerve-wracking, but it's so fun. So yes, my name's Angela and I am a licensed midwife. I attend home births, and I just recently relocated from Santa Rosa to Sacramento area, Roseville specifically, but the general Sacramento and Placer County area. It's kind of a funny thing that midwifery didn't bring me here. Vines did. My husband's a winemaker, so our dream of having our own vineyard and homestead kind of brought us here because my family's here. So it's been kind of a crazy 3 months, but we're settling in here now. So, but I still have a client in Santa Rosa and still have lots of babies that I've caught in Sonoma County and will forever be attached to that area. So it's kind of doesn't feel like I left it. It just feels like I kind of just stepped away for a second and said, I'll be back, or I'll see you later. But yeah, just a little bit of who I am. Is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I have been licensed since 2013. I went to school in San Diego at Nizhoni Institute of Midwifery, which is a physical freestanding school. I actually don't know if it even still exists. I think it might, but
It does.
it does. It went through a lot of hands as far as owners go. So, and I was living in Los Angeles at the time with my boyfriend, who's now my husband, and took really a 180 with what I was doing. I was on the fast track to corporate restaurant management. I come from a restaurant background. My family's had a restaurant since I was 1 year old. We had it for 35 years in Los Angeles in the San Fernando Valley. And so I grew up in the restaurant business, know it inside and out, and it was a natural fit for me. And so I started with a corporate restaurant in, 2001, and worked for them for 15 years and was on the fast track to getting my own store when I just...
What restaurant was your family restaurant?
My family's restaurant was called Fab's Italian Kitchen. My maiden name is Fabricini, so people call us the Fabs for short. So it's Fab's Italian Kitchen. And it started in Reseda, and then it ended up in Sherman Oaks. We had lots of locations at one point and boiled back down to one. But it was literally just your mom and pop Italian place. Like it was cozy. It wasn't flashy. My grandfather would greet people. My dad would greet people. My uncle was a chef. All of us as cousins, as soon as you turned 14, you started working at the family's restaurant.
Love it.
Every holiday, birthday party, everything was there.
What's that movie about the Greek family?
My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Yeah, that totally reminds me of that.
Totally. It was literally like it was another house, right? Like it was like we had our house, but then we also had the restaurant. And so it was, you just would go and hang out there and have everything there. So it was really, I look back at it and it was really a sweet time as far as just growing up. And I'm the oldest of 3, but then I had 10 other cousins. And all of us were pretty close in age. So we were all together all the time. It was a really sweet way to grow up in the Valley in Los Angeles as a family. and it made me love the kind of fast-paced adrenaline, you know, like fast Friday night, everything's behind, you got to catch up, which is a little bit of what, you know, like a taste of the adrenaline rush in midwifery. But you know, it was fun, and it was a natural fit for me, and it was good money. So I was doing that, and I had taken a pause in like 2005, and I was living in the Bay Area in Walnut Creek, and I had gone to NHI, National Holistic Institute in Emeryville outside of Berkeley, and got licensed as a massage therapist. And so I was doing that kind of like on the side. And it was like this kind of duality in my life of very corporate, buttoned up, run a restaurant type of life. And then I also on the weekends and the evenings was doing really healing work and connecting with people on a much deeper level. And it was a nice balance at the time. And I was single and I had time to work that much. And then I hit a point in about 2010 that I just had like that fork in the road where I was like, I don't know if I want to manage restaurants for the rest of my life, you know, and the restaurant that I was working for had just gone corporate. It used to be family owned and it went corporate. It was huge. And they started being open 365 days of the year. And I just thought, if I'm going to work on Christmas, I don't want to be managing people that are paying $80 for a steak. That's not why I want to miss Christmas. If I'm going to miss Christmas, I'd rather do it supporting people and connecting with people. And so I thought about actually becoming an NP. I can't even think of it.
A naturopath or
naturopath. And so I was looking at Bastyr in Seattle because they still had the dual track where you could become a naturopath and a midwife at the same time. And I had applied and I had gotten in. And so I was about 3 months away from leaving for Bastyr and completely quitting the restaurant business. And then I met my husband. and I went, well, this is fun. And I was working with a naturopath in LA. And I said, gosh, I'm so nervous about leaving and going. And so we had this huge heart to heart. And it boiled down to the fact that I really loved taking care of people, but specifically when I was working with him, I loved working on pregnant women and babies. And he's like, listen, being a naturopathic practitioner, you have to treat all the people for all the things. And if that's your specialty, maybe naturopath is not what you want to do. And he's like, maybe you want to look into something more like becoming a midwife. And I said, well, I don't want to work in the hospital. Like, I don't want to be constrained by, you know, these very set rules and stuff. And he said, no, there's home birth midwives. And I'm like, there's not, that's not even a thing. I mean, it was so off my radar. Like, I grew up in a very Western medicine, go to Kaiser, antibiotics, get all your shots. Like, there just was never any sort of deviation or alternative healing or anything. And so wanting to be a naturopath was already out there for my family. And then he said the word home birth midwife. And I was like, what does that mean? So I found one in Los Angeles, and she ended up being my preceptor. And I found her and I contacted her, and she had a birth center in Los Angeles. And I said, hi, I don't know you, and I think I want to be a midwife, but I'm not sure. Can I come and meet you? And so I met them. And as soon as I went, through a long period of time of getting to know them and getting to know a set of clients that allowed me to come to their birth just as an observer. And when I saw it, I was like, well, this is it. I'm done. And so I ended up not going to Bastyr and enrolled at Nizhoni instead. And so then I graduated, and then I hung on. I was working in the restaurant while I was going to school at Nizhoni and being on call. And it was kind of a really insane 3 years. And thank goodness my husband was boyfriend at the time, husband now, was so fantastic. I mean, he would just, you know, fill in the gaps and make it happen if I had to leave and go to a birth. And
a blessing that it was your family's restaurant too, because if it was just like a restaurant gig and you're like, hi, I gotta go.
Yeah.
You know?
It actually was
No,
just a restaurant gig.
Oh,
I
really?
stopped
Yeah, within our family's restaurant.
I stopped working at my family's restaurant when I graduated high school. So 1997 was the last time that I worked at my family's restaurant. And then I got a job in college at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, which is now, like a worldwide corporate conglomerate steakhouse. And I worked for them for like 15 years, and I worked my way up, and I was managing their restaurants, and I was literally like a year away from getting my own as a general manager when I decided to go to midwifery school, and they thought I was.
So how did that work, working there and being on call? Because there's a lot of student midwives who listen to this, and that's one of the big things. It's hard to hold a job and put yourself through school, and like how do you do both? And so how did that work out?
Well, I think that I'm definitely an exception, not the rule. So I think because I had worked for them for so long, it almost felt like a family restaurant. They had just, like I said, they had just become corporate. When I started with them, they were still owned by one woman, like the whole, like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, if you know them. It was just owned by one woman. Her name was Ruth Patel, and she was super fiery and really amazing businesswoman, but it was still just a family-owned restaurant. And by the time I left them 15 plus years later, it was corporate, there were shareholders, it was publicly traded, and they were open 360. I mean, you used to get your birthday off, there were all holidays off, like it really changed as far as a culture goes. So I think because I had been with them for so long and I had worked in the same location for so long, that even though it was technically corporate, it felt like a family restaurant. And so I think for anybody out there that is trying to work in the restaurant business and become a midwife, stick to your family restaurants, because they're just going to be more flexible and allowing of, I mean, there were shifts that I would literally take my apron off, and walk out and just say, I'm out of here. Like I gotta go to a birth. And it was also a perfect storm that my husband worked there. That's where I met him. And so he would kind of cover for me. It was like this it all aligned nicely. It was, but it's definitely not the norm. And so, I was in a funny place being a student midwife. I found it intimidating to be a student midwife and not having had a baby. It was really, that
was me too.
But was it? It was, I was so confident in my skills and my ability to connect with people. But when, especially like postpartum, when they would talk, when we would do home visits and talk with women about, how they were feeling and what they were going through and breastfeeding, I could say all the right things about this kind of hold and this, but there was always a little bit of it where I felt like I was missing something. And it was hard to kind of bridge that gap, because I'm like, what if I don't ever have kids? Does that mean that I'm not going to be as good of a midwife?
It's interesting to me that so did you ever do doula work? Because I know that usually a lot of midwives start as a doula.
Yeah. So I became a doula in 2011. And so, I mean, I'm telling you, I was an insane person. I was doing doula work. I remember my first client, I charged her $100, literally, right? I was working at the restaurant, and I was going to school, and I was precepting at the birth center in Los Angeles, and I didn't go to birth with them for the first year, but still I was like doing prenatal days and stuff like that. So I basically had 4 jobs, like at the same time. So yes, I was a doula. And then the birth center had like a classroom. And so I would sit in and kind of help facilitate childbirth classes to kind of learn their curriculum and be able to eventually teach it. So the birth center itself that I worked, that I did my preceptorship at, I eventually worked for them after I graduated and was licensed for a short period of time. The birth center doesn't exist anymore. But it definitely, I still really love that model of care, like specifically for a midwife. Like I really feel that group mentality like that, whether it's with a birth center or just in a group setting, is literally the most sustainable and only way really to do this for a long time. I've been practicing kind of like on my own for, since we moved to Sonoma County, which was 7 years ago. And it's hard in Los Angeles. I had a group of midwives, much sounds like the way that you guys work, where it's like, you're constantly going to burst with each other. And
so how many
not just
of you were there? Because that's something that's an ongoing conversation with us, is like, because what's the minimum you need to make it be where it's not too many midwives, where the clients are like, oh, but I really liked her and now I never even see her, and but it makes it so people can go off call. Like, what was the setup?
It was 3 of us, and it worked beautifully.
Mm.
We all pulled in our own clients, but we had a set. So the initial appointment you would always do with one other midwife. The 28-week you'd do with another midwife. The 36-week you'd do with another midwife. And if I pulled that client in, I was their primary midwife, but I would make sure that those 3 appointments where somebody was coming with me, that it was a combination of, so they would meet one midwife once and one midwife twice. And then they understood that it could be either of those midwives that would come to the birth. And that alternatively, it was possible that with the clients that I met, that those other midwives pulled in, that I might not end up at their birth at all because I could be off call. And we took it on a case by case basis. Some clients would really connect with some of the, like if I pulled a client in, that client maybe really connected with one of the other 2 midwives, and they were totally fine that if I took off call time during their their span of being in dates, they were okay with that. Like they were okay with, if you're not at our birth, it's okay, even though you're the one that initially made us hire you. So we didn't have a business all together. We all individually had our own businesses. But we kind of had it set in a way that we all worked together as a team. And it was probably the safest I felt, in terms of just like really feeling that the feeling that I had at the birth center, in the terms of, coming from a restaurant background, which is all teamwork, right? You got to work with everybody in your team. Then moving to birth work and in a birth center, it was a very similar, not the same, but similar kind of culture. And then taking that and refining it to something that really worked for the 3 of us, but had the same values of, we're working as a team. There's, if I don't have something, you have it. We pool it. It was very group minded, and it was, I thrive, just personally, I thrive in that kind of setting. And so when I moved to Sonoma County, that was a big piece that I was missing. And I looked at there were a couple birth centers in Santa Rosa, and neither of them were the right fit. Birth centers are a tough thing to get right, I think, coming from a midwife's point of view and administrative point of view. When it's not done right, it's blaringly obvious, I think, for me as a midwife. But if you can get the sweet spot, if you can get it right, if you can get the administrative stuff to coincide with the midwifery medical pieces and make it all work together and everybody feels supported, it's such a lovely way to practice, because I just think there's so much less burnout. But it's a tough thing to make it right.
Can I ask how you guys sorted that out financially, between the 3 of you? And
so we would, so whatever the fee was, whoever pulled them in would get 2/3 of that fee as like a finding, like the finder's fee or the primary midwife fee. And then the other third was put into a pot, and that money kind of sat in an account, and then whoever was the assist got paid out of that account. And so as the primary midwife, you were always making 2/3 of the fee, and the other part was used for supplies and for assist fees. And so and taxes and things like that, we would all pull from there to pay our taxes. So it was more off the top in the beginning, but in the end, it all ended up coming out for us. It ended up coming out well, because then we weren't dipping into the money that we were making, that 2/3. We weren't dipping into that to buy supplies or pay taxes or pay one another. There was just kind of this like slush fund that we would throw that other third and then pay one another from there, or pay for the things that we needed from there.
Interesting.
So it was yeah, we really just made it up as we went, but it just so happened that all of our personalities melded, so it just worked for all of us. If we had brought anybody else into it, or if there was a personality that just didn't like that, I could imagine that would be, that wouldn't work for everyone, is what I'm trying to say. But it just so happened that the three of us, it worked well for all of us. So
thank you for sharing, because I think that is a really big topic for a lot of midwives, is how to make this sustainable and also not so big to where we're just like the hospital and our clients don't even know who's going to show up. And
right. Yeah, and we really, we would have monthly peer review just amongst the three of us. And not only would we talk about the clients themselves, but we would also take a look at our paperwork, because like if I brought a client in, they would get all of my informed consents, all of my forms, mine with my letterhead. But we wanted to make sure that it was consistent, that we all had the same stance, and we didn't always feel the same way about things. So we would have to work that out and figure out how we would want to bridge that gap between, IV antibiotics for GBS positive, clients. Like we didn't always all be on the same page about that. So things like that. So we would, revise our paperwork to make it sure that our paperwork was seamless across the board, even though it was my letterhead and another, two midwives' letterheads. So it was a tricky, weird, awesome, like we just kind of made it. We made it what we wanted, and it was really
Did everybody have like kind of a similar client load as far as how many clients they would bring into the practice?
For the most part, yes. There was one client that lived in an area that didn't have as many midwives as the other two of us, and so she tended to bring in a little bit more. But at the time, again, like that was okay. That was okay for her. She didn't feel like she was overworked. She liked making the extra money. It was almost like working, like in the restaurant business, like picking up an extra shift. It was like, if you want to bring in more clients, or if you are just naturally bringing in more clients, you're going to benefit from that, because you're getting 2/3 of that fee.
Right.
And so, if that, like there was one point I remember that that one midwife, her caseload, her client load was more than the other two of us could keep up with. Like we had other things going on, and there were dates that didn't work for us. And then we had another midwife that had her own practice in a whole nother area, but she was really great. She was able to fill in the gaps if that other midwife couldn't get coverage from us. So there was like a fourth player that was not involved with our, informed consents and our money and our paperwork. She was literally like a guest assistant. But we had another person who would come in and help if the workload got heavy on one midwife and lighter on the others.
Sure. And did you have students?
No, well, I didn't. The midwife who is now still practicing in Thousand Oaks, she had students, and she still has a very busy practice. We're talking about like, the first year, 2 years of being licensed. Like it just wasn't,
I was just curious, like as far as assisting, if if you had students assisting you, or sounds like there was always another midwife who was there.
It was always pretty much just the three of us until right before I left to move to Sonoma County. Because we were all still pretty new. We were, all very skilled and excellent midwives, and we had all come through that birth center, which was a super busy birth center. I mean, they did, as a student, and a student who didn't have any kids or any really anything to keep me from going to births towards the end of my preceptorship. We were doing like 25 births a month, and I was going to at least half of them.
Wow.
It was really, really, really busy. They had 5 full-time midwives and 1 OB. So they had, or I'm sorry, they had, 5 full-time midwives, one of which was normally a CNM. And then they had an OB as well. And so it was busy. I mean, it was not abnormal for me to go to a birth and go back to the birth center, sleep in one of the birth center rooms for 6 hours, and then go to another birth because I wanted the numbers and I wanted the experience. And I was just going to births, not back to back, but sometimes back to back.
Yeah, sounds like you too.
Yeah, the OB that was there, did he do births there that were like more high risk or something, or what was his purpose?
Yeah, so he would do ultrasounds once a week. And then he was our a consultant, he was consulting. So when we would have peer review, if we had any questions or anybody that we thought we might want to risk out of care, he was great because he also had, he could prescribe. So if there was anything beyond what we could give, or if any clients needed anything, but specifically he was for high risk. So he does twins and breeches at home. And that was his shtick. And so if clients had a breech baby, he would be able to do a version for them if they were, eligible for it in the office. They never had to go to the hospital. And if he couldn't turn them, then he'd give them, give them an assessment and say whether they were a candidate for a breech birth and if they wanted to do a breech birth at home. I attended a birth with him and we did a VBA 3C. And just did stuff that we shouldn't be doing, we weren't supposed to be doing, but people that didn't want to go to the hospital, a lot of twins. He does a lot of twins out of the hospital.
Yeah.
So
are you allowed to say who it is?
I don't see why not. Dr. Stuart Fishbein.
We were all assuming, but
yeah. I mean, he's amazing. He is, it's literally his specialty. Like I don't think I've ever met anybody who is so well versed in breech and twins, and he's fast acting. He is, he's incredible. And then to, as a student to like learn from him, like suturing and things like that. I mean, just things that, things that I got to see that I probably wouldn't have seen if I hadn't been at that birth center, right? Twins at home and breeches at home and suturing jobs that we probably would have rolled somebody in 4th degree tears, he'd fix at home because he could. And it was an incredible learning experience to just sit and just absorb it and watch it. But he was really great at being hands-on and allowing us, once were experienced enough, he would allow us to get our hands in there and learn. And, it was really invaluable. So the 3 of us all came from that birth center. And so we felt like we were really, we were solid, but in those first couple of years, none of us really felt like we were solid enough to then be taking on students. So we were still in that point where we were like, we feel really good, but maybe let's just stick to the 3 of us for now. So it was,
And then, so how long were you there for, and what brought you up north?
So I was doing, in LA total, doing birth work for about 5 years, about 2 of which being licensed. And then we moved to Sonoma County because, I really have to give it to him, right? My husband was really like the behind the scene, making all, filling in the gaps. And it got to a point where he was like, okay, so now it's my turn. Like I didn't finish college. I don't want to work in the restaurant business my whole life. And I said, okay, well, what do you want to do? He's like, well, I want to make wine. I said, well, I don't think that we can really make wine in Los Angeles. Like there are wineries, but there aren't a whole lot of like vineyards and the vineyard culture. And you're not going to learn from start to finish how to make wine in LA. So we started looking at different areas that we could go. Fresno actually has a huge viticulture community, and they have a community college that has a viticulture program. We were looking at Paso Robles in Central California. And then of course we were looking like Sonoma County, Napa County. And I thought, it has to be somewhere that is also home birth friendly. Like it has to be where I can pick up my practice and work hard, but establish myself. And out of all those areas, Sonoma County kind of resonated for us as far as being somewhere where he could learn, I could establish a home birth midwifery practice. We liked the climate, and we had friends that lived there. So it wasn't far from my sister who was in Roseville. So it was like, she's only 2 hours away. Friends are in Santa Rosa. And so we moved to Santa Rosa to give it a try. And he got a job at a winery as an intern. And when we left Sonoma County, he was an assistant winemaker and an enologist. He had learned a ton, but he also realized that, like most things, the money and the money doesn't equate to the satisfaction. Like he loves winemaking, but there's a cap that you can make in winemaking unless you're at like just a ginormous winery. And he doesn't want to be at a ginormous winery because there's a lot of bureaucratic political stuff involved in winemaking too. So we said we better off making our own. So then we started looking at property in Sonoma County and ended up finding the perfect piece of property here. So we left for him to make wine, and that was a big jump for us because I left a really thriving practice, which was really scary. It was really scary to leave that, and it didn't feel unfair, but it definitely felt like a sacrifice. It was. But then I remembered the sacrifice that he had made that I wouldn't have had a busy practice like that and been able to do it so seamlessly. I would have done it, but it would have been a lot rockier if I hadn't had his support. And we also we knew that we wanted children, and we didn't want to raise them in Los Angeles. We wanted to slow down a bit and get into a slower paced life. And we thought at the time, my parents still lived in Los Angeles, and so did his mom. None of them live in Los Angeles anymore, but at the time they did. And so we were like, well, if we're going to get out, we better get out before we have kids, because if we have kids here with our parents down the street, we're never going to leave.
Yeah.
They're going to make it too easy on us and we're never going to leave. So we had to get out. And then they just followed. So it worked out.
You're like, we have to go away, have the babies, and lure them in.
That's right. And that's basically what we all did. So so we moved up for non-midwifery related, adventures. But I ended up settling in and having a really sweet practice in Sonoma County. It was not as much home birth as I would have liked, but I think that was because I was still really searching for, I got spoiled with that partnership. I got really spoiled with it. And then moving to Sonoma County and not having the same partnership, it didn't afford me to attend as many home births. But I got to get into the community, and I did a lot of monitrice. I found a niche of people in Sonoma County that wanted to labor at home and wanted to roll into the hospital at the 11th hour, but they wanted a hospital birth. And I found those people somehow, gravitated towards them. And those first couple of years that we were in Sonoma County, that was my bread and butter. It's like I would just go to, I would labor at home, and then we would roll in, push a baby out, and she'd sign out and say, I want to go back home. And so I found a niche that way.
Yeah.
But always is so fascinating to me, people, and I get it because I've done that too, but like, why go in at all?
I know. I think, at least in my experience.
But yeah, we know.
Yeah. Insurance, an unsupportive partner or a scared partner, yeah. But it is funny, especially the ones that roll in, push their baby out, and then literally say, I want to go home.
Yeah.
I'm like,
right, sign out AMA like 2 hours later. I'm like, gas is expensive nowadays. Like you could have just stayed home.
So Angela, what point did you and I meet in this journey to Sonoma County?
I think that we met at, I think you were working with Paula, right?
Yeah.
And I think I learned your name and got your phone number before I ever met you in person, because she was going on vacation and she was looking for coverage. And I was new and I thought it was a good way to get into the community and get to know people. And so she had put something out in like an email group and looking for coverage. And I responded and said, I'm not on call. I'm new to the area. I'm happy to take call for you for whatever period of time it was, like 5 days or something. And I think you were one of the either students or assistants that she had given me that said, okay, well, if and when these women go into labor, this is, these are the people that you would call that I normally work with. And so I remember getting your name and your phone number from her, but I hadn't met you in real life. And then I think probably the first time I met you was probably at a peer review in Ukiah. I feel like that's.
Well, because I'm remembering, like, I think we met up and I want to say Sebastopol at some point.
Oh, yes.
We had talked about the idea of maybe starting to work together, but you were trying to get pregnant, so we weren't sure how it's going to unfold. And then you did get pregnant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I remember that. I remember that. Yeah, we met at I think at like TaylorMade or something like that at the coffee shop.
I want to say I was newly licensed and I was trying to find like my new community and somebody who wasn't like a teacher of mine and felt more of like peer to peer, but somebody more experienced than me that I could bring with me to births until I felt really comfortable. And so I think it was towards like the beginning of my licensed career.
Yeah, because we started trying to have a baby in 2015. And then we didn't get pregnant with Patty until 2018. So we were on a 3-year journey of trying to get pregnant. And that was a lot of, that was an interesting time because it was, I was on so many, medications and specialists and meetings that I naturally took a break from birth work because I just didn't have the time. And then what I realized is I also didn't have the bandwidth. It was, and that was a really hard thing to admit, to like say, I can't take care of other people right now because I have to take care of myself. And that felt a little defeating, but it was the truth. And so I think we met right in the height of all of that. Right when, because even our fertility journey took lots of twists and turns. So it was a muddy time. So yeah, that's right. I forgot.
And so how did you and Leah meet?
So Leah and I met through, I think I asked Harmony, right, Leah? Like I had moved to the area because you knew me from Utah, the birth center in Utah.
Yeah, I worked with Harmony there. And yeah, I feel like she reached out and was sort of like, I have a good friend who's moving up there. And then it was a while ago, but yeah. And then we did a couple births together. I assisted you.
Yep. Yeah.
And then but that was before you had your munchkin. So that was a while ago.
Yeah. And I think it's about the same time. So we did a birth together in Santa Rosa that transferred. And then we did that birth together in Vallejo, which I don't think I would have never, if I'd stayed in Sonoma County, I had swore off. That was a gnarly commute. But at the time I was like, oh, Vallejo, that's not that far. And then right after that birth in Vallejo was right when we started all of our fertility treatments. And that's when I just kind of took a pause to everything and focused.
Yeah. 3 years, that sounds like quite a journey. Is there anything within that time frame that you want to share?
I feel like that could be, I could sit and talk about that like in a whole nother podcast. The expectations of not only as a woman of wanting lots of babies. Like, I mean, when my husband and I met, we said 3, 4, 5 babies, lots of babies. And then the taboo subject of male infertility, because our journey is actually my husband's infertility, not mine. It is mine because it's our family, but you know what I mean? We don't talk about that, right? We talk about infertility and we automatically assume that it's It's the woman. And so that was a huge curveball, and finding community and support for him in that. And then managing the expectations of not only as a woman wanting many babies and realizing that as I got older, because I had Patty when I was 38, almost 39, and I'm 41 now. So, and we just tried 3 more times that didn't work. So the reality of being a little bit older and trying to have a family, and then getting pregnant and wanting a home birth as a home birth midwife and having my birth not end up that way. It was a lot of expectations to manage and a lot of things to navigate as far as feelings and emotions. And it makes me, I know that it has made me a better midwife in terms of just being able to manage my clients' expectations, helping them navigate that, and having so much more empathy for, I have a client now who is not even post dates, but she's just done. Like she is mentally done. And every day she tries something to get her baby out and she says it doesn't work and it failed. And we had this huge conversation this morning, and I don't think I would have had the tidbits of wisdom and the empathy and the insight to be able to kind of help redirect her mind and her heart had I had not had expectations of my own that I had to manage and redirect and all of those things. So not only the physicalness of having a baby and going through, breastfeeding issues and all of these things that lend itself, of course, obviously to midwifery, but the mental game that happened with like trying to get pregnant, finally getting pregnant with twins, but losing one, like the whole thing. And then managing the expectations at the end and trying to control something that was really not in my control. It's made me a much better midwife in that sense. But yeah, it was a trip, you just like, at least I tell my clients, and I don't know if you all feel the same way, but you get the birth that you need, not always the birth that you want, I think, or the baby that you need, the personality of that child. It's a lot of control that has to be let go of. And so I look back and I'm like, that's exactly the birth I was supposed to have. But it still doesn't take away from the fact that it wasn't what I expected. So as a home birth midwife, I think that's a whole nother, topic, conversation, things that I just wish people would talk about more. I just wish that there was more.
Well, you're right. Our timing is almost done, and so for everyone listening, there's going to be a sequel. We're doing a part 2. We're going to have Angela back, and we would love to dive like deep into that journey of infertility with you and how your labor and birth and everything progressed. And all that sounds like it could be an amazing podcast. So I'll definitely schedule that with you, and we'll link the 2 in show notes to each other. But this was so amazing to hear, because we had no idea that we were going to be talking about this group practice with you, but that was my favorite thing we talked about, because it just comes up every day. There's a new midwife in our area who's just a few weeks ago talking to me about like, how do I make this work? Like I want a practice, but I want to be with my clients too. And, how do we do both? So I think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of people listening. And I'm not going to forget our last questions we have for you.
Okay.
So we have 3 extra special questions that we ask everybody. And one of them is, what is your most unpopular opinion?
Oh my. Unpopular opinion. That epidurals are pretty amazing when used correctly. When used correctly and appropriately for the right client, they are pretty darn good.
Good.
Oh, okay. Oh gosh. Okay, so really,
You always get this one, Emma.
yeah. So if your belly button had any superpower, you push it, something happens of your will, what would it be?
Oh,
You weren't ready for that one.
yeah. That I could snap out of a bad mood immediately.
Ooh.
Like immediately, and have my whole day turn around without having to really work at it.
Oh,
So if
beautiful.
anyone's curious why my daughter's belly button is bruised, it's because I just keep pushing it. Like, come on.
Reset.
Same. Like,
That's
I
a good
That's like
really feel that.
one of the best answers to that question.
I know.
Okay, and so last one is, we'll do time travel. If you could go back in time and sit down with your teenage self, what advice would you give her?
Don't be so hard on yourself. I spent probably most of my 20s living the way a 20-year-old, somebody in their 20s should be living, and then beating myself up about it. Zero grace for myself. I would tell myself, just do it and have fun, and it'll all work out in the end. Promise. Promise.
Oh,
Yeah.
so great to sit with you. And could you give us any contact info, leave it for people who want to get in touch with you?
Yeah.
And we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a website. So the name of my business is A Birth at a Time. It's kind of a mouthful. My website is the same. So abirthatatime.com. I'm on most, social medias, Facebook, Instagram. I have a Yelp page. If anybody's listening to this and they're my ex-client and they haven't left a review yet, you may. And then it has my contact information on my website, and email. Phone is always the best. People can text and call. And then right now I'm serving Sacramento and Placer County. I'm not taking clients that require for me to be on call quite yet, but I am very much available for alternative birth services. So childbirth classes, I do those one-on-one or in group settings if I can get a group together. Placenta encapsulation, so if there's it doesn't have to be, it's not birth right now, probably at least 6 months until I start taking clients that require for me to be on call, but definitely in the area and available for other birth goodies.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Angela.
Thank you so much for having me. This is super fun.
Thanks everybody for listening. You can find us at Born Wild Podcast on Instagram. For inquiries or feedback, you can email us at bornwildpodcast@gmail.com. You can find me, Emma Ray, on Instagram at Emma Ray, REA.
Sophia at sophiabirth.com.
And me, Leah, at Bay Area Home Birth.
We would really appreciate it if you would rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps us reach more people. And as always,
Stay wild.